On today's video, you're gonna watch a dude put his dude's cab in his cab. Dude. By the end of today's video, we are going to be able to play this pinball machine without having to use a keyboard. So we're going to ditch the keyboard and we're going to install a L'atelier Arnoz dude's cab, and I'm really excited to put this in. This is going to allow us to get our left and right flippers and MagnaSave buttons working, our analog to digital plunger set up. We're going to have an accelerometer with our nudge abilities and all of the front buttons on the front panel, including coin door for coin credits. I'm excited, so let's take a look at what we got to do. So the first thing you're going to want to do is figure out a shelf for your dude's cab to sit on. Now, I'm using one of the boards from the bonus boards kit that comes from pinballcabinet.com. That way the material matches the inside here. And off camera, I've just pre-painted the edges so it matches and it's black. Now, you're going to want to figure out what height you want and how far from the front of the cab. Keep in mind you got your coin mech swinging in here. And so once you figured out your height, you need some brackets. So I've pre-made some wooden brackets to screw into the side of the cabinet. And then for height, I've just got some off-cut pieces that I cut on the table saw, the unpainted wood there, just to keep the height even so that when I put the brackets in, the shelf will be even. And then instead of screwing up into the shelf, I've got these anti-vibration mats that I've cut up. And instead of screwing into those and basically transferring the vibrations right into the dude's cab, we're going to do what we did in the other video and silicone those on so nothing moves and the vibrations are getting deadened. We're also going to put some anti-vibration matting, the self-adhesive type, underneath as well. Now, the reason why we want the shelf is for that anti-vibration, so that we don't have false nudges going onto our dude's cab. So see if we can isolate it a bit. And the other thing is we need a shelf anyway that's easily accessible from the front coin door so that we can do adjustments on our amps and things like that. So once you got the shelf figured out, I would start laying out all your boards and all your pieces and components and look at all your wiring and kind of lay things out where you think they should be, and that will kind of give you an idea of where this shelf needs to be and maybe even how big the shelf should be, and if you need to figure out some wire management, etc. So we're also going to attach some of that Stay Geek wire management underneath so that we can put the wires to the back and underneath and it'll look nice and clean. So let's go ahead and attach this shelf and then we'll start putting things on. All right, now I would let that dry overnight so that way you're not trying to work in there and having it move around and shift on you. Now, onto the front panel buttons. All right, so we got our Marco Specialties authentic pinball buttons for a William cabinet, which are great looking. However, I kind of thought I would do a little bit of a customization on this one because of the theme of the cabinet and the idea of being in a drive-in movie. Rather than having kind of like this black kind of textured bezel on the button, I thought, why not convert it over to having a nice little chrome bezel? I think that looks a little slicker. So in order to do that, I had to do some mods, so let me show you what you got to do. Now, another mod I'd like to do at the same time is that these Williams Marco Specialty buttons have a 6.3 volt incandescent bulb in here, which is nothing wrong with it. However, using the Dude's Cab and our future MOS 8 boards, if they're 12 volt, then we can totally control them with that board to do the blinking that we need in DOF. but we can't do that without lowering the voltage if we have these. So we're going to also switch up to the 12-volt LED style as well, and then we can run that. So essentially we just need to get this apart. So you just twist this counterclockwise, this pops out, and you can spin this off, and then you got to just push this in a little bit, and then that pops out the front, and then don't lose the spring. Okay, and now we're going to put that stuff to the side and do the same thing on this one. Make sure you don't mix up your parts. All right, there we go. So there's the nice bezel we want to switch over, so we can see if this fits in here, which it does not. Now, if I had an orange lens in this, then we could just pop the cap off and put the extra ball plastic with the text underneath it, but I don't have an orange one, and I do want it to be orange. So instead, we're just going to take a little Dremel tool and we're going to open up the inside here so that that button goes in nice and easy. Now the inside guts here on the plastic here are a little bit shorter too, so I'm also going to switch these as well. And this one's pretty tight. I'm going to have to get a screwdriver to pop this one off. And then just take your time until this thing goes in and out nicely. So this is going to need a couple more passes. Okay, and then put it together with the spring and then just make sure that it's not binding at all, because if it was to stick in, that would actually give you some issues later and you're going to have a hard time figuring out what's going on with your vpin. So there we go. Now we just have to put it back together. Okay, and then to put this back, you just basically click this back in, line it up, twist it clockwise, and you should be able to hear that micro switch going. Now for this launch ball button, for whatever reason, when I take out the incandescent bulb part, when I go to put in the other style, it actually does not go in. And I tried looking at one and seeing if I could mess with it to get it to work. It just really didn't. So another simple solution, take this bulb out, right? This is the 6.3 volt incandescent. It's just a blade style bulb. And then take out the 12 volt LED light from another one and just make sure that the color matches. So this is a red button, so we got a little red shroud on this LED. And then put this back in like that, and then this one will go back in. Clockwise. And there's the micro switch. Now, and if you're worried, you could always test this. It's these side terminals for the bulb. Because it's a 12 volt LED, it's not going to be as hot, so you're not going to risk melting this or anything. But it is polarity specific now, so one side will be negative, one side will be positive, and if you get it wrong when you do the install, you just have to turn them around. So sweet, everything is now running off 12 volt bulbs, so I don't actually need to step the voltage down, and we can use our DOF controls to cause this launch ball to flash or our start button to flicker when we want it to. Let's put these on the cap. Why does that bug me so much? Man, I think I must have OCD. Let's fix that. Okay, since we're working on buttons, why don't we install the button boards too? So if you remember, we were using these to just try to clean up the wiring. So now we just have a nice kind of cable that'll go up to this, and then we just have individual wires going to the switches and whatever needs it. So this should pretty up the cabinet a bit. So to figure out where these go, if you look at your dude's cab, this one right here, it says it is the left MagnaSave and left flipper, as well as the start and the exit or return button. So we're going to have to put one somewhere in this corner here to access those buttons nice and easy. And then the one underneath, that button board gets the fire button and extra ball, and there's a bunch of spares. So since the extra is here and the fire button can come up here eventually, we'll probably put another one maybe on this wall in the front. And then the other button boards is for the right MagnaSave and right flipper. So we will put that one on this side as well as the launch ball. And then the other one is kind of on its own. It's just got tilt, which we could put on either side, but maybe just to make this a little bit cleaner. You know, there's not a lot of things going on in here, so maybe it'd be a good idea to put the tilt over here down low on the cab. So I 3D printed a bunch of these holding boards for all the Arnoz products. So I'm going to start mounting this stuff here, and if you want to learn how to make some 3D prints for your own cabinets, I'll post a link to a video that's a great introductory video, as well as where to get all of these STL files. All right, so the next thing up is this dude's cab can also have a brain board put to it. So these two connections here. Now what the brain board does is it will take care of these ROM service buttons inside the coin door if you don't have one. And it also adds some other functionalities, so let's take a look at it. Okay, so there's those ROM buttons I was talking about, and if you didn't want to even buy the coin door switch, you could literally just open the door and hit this to simulate that you have opened up the coin door. And then it also has a button here for night mode, so in the actual configurator you can select what mechanical toys you want to turn off when you hit this night mode button. There is a calibration button for your plunger, that's like a one-touch thing. And there's also two extra buttons that could be used for just about anything. They are labeled volume, minus, and plus. When I talked to Arnaud, he said that he liked to use this with Pinball so that he can turn things up and down based off of which button he pushes on the cab. Now, originally I found this STL file that holds this brain board, and I couldn't find a good place in the cabinet that I wanted this because I wanted some pretty easy access to this. So I started looking at other options, and there were some screws already sticking out. I believe it's for like a bill acceptor for the coin door. I ended up using some computer standoff mounts, and they worked perfect. You can adjust kind of the position where they needed to be, and got all four screwed in, and this thing's rock solid. So we're going to leave that mounted there, and we'll just hook those JST connection cable wires out with the regular coin door wires. Now, I know a couple of you are going to be starting to say some comments about why does he have the brain board plus the ROM service buttons? Technically, you do not need both. So if you're wondering why, you can use one or the other. In this case, I'm actually not going to use these service buttons, and I'm exclusively going to use the brain board because I want to show off Arnoz's board, and he's got the extra functionality buttons that will make this a lot cooler. So just to make it clear, you don't have to buy these as well as this. This does this in case you didn't buy the full mechanisms and the service buttons, or if you just had like a 3D printed coin door or something like that, this would take care of everything. Now, as for a button for inserting coins, we're actually going to change the use of the coin reject button. So when you push it from the front, it's going to push on a switch on the back and give us a coin input. Now, I did a good video on how to do this before, but I've got another solution that's even slicker. So there is an STL file that you can print off, and I'll put a link in the video description below. And you basically just take this screw out, put this in, and then you mount one of these leaf switches with the long side facing towards the coin door. And then when you push the button, it pushes on here and gives you your insert for the coin. So we're going to use these now, and I'm only going to put one in right now because I'm still 3D printing the other one, and I've got some leaf switches on order for the second one. Now, I don't need two coin inserts, so what we might do is turn one of these into like a game help or some other kind of use in VPX, or for some other kind of use in PinUP Popper. Right now, to mount the dude's cab to your shelf, there is a STL file that Arnoz has provided on his website, so you can download that and print that like I did ahead of time. However, I really was kind of impressed about how well my little anti-vibration plate that was meant for a gyroscope worked on my budget build. So I also pre-ordered one of those kits again to use like I did on my other one. If you want to know more about what I'm talking about, I'll put a link above to the video so you can see what I did there. Now, I went ahead and ordered this. However, it is a lot smaller than this dude's cab. And so I was thinking, well, maybe I could order two and put them sideways. And then I kind of thought, dude, you have a 3D printer. Let's see what's out there. Let's see if we can make something work. And let me show you what I found. So what I ended up doing is searching for a anti-vibration board STL, and I had to sift through a bunch of STL files to find it, but I ended up finding something like this, and I will put the link in the video description so you can download it yourself. And so it was about this size though, so that was the next problem. And if you see, it's just way too small for what it's got to be. So what I ended up doing is scaling up the part 120% in all directions to make it a little bit bigger, so now it fits a little better. And then it was still too skinny, and so on the one x-axis only, I zoomed it up to 155%. And then this is the final product. So I was happy with how that fit. And I printed this out of something else so I didn't have to run out of my neon green PETG. So after printing off the bottom plates and putting it together, you can see this is the final product. And I think that's going to work awesome. And you'll never believe what I'm using for these vibration dampener balls in the corner. These are earplugs that I use in my shop all the time. And they are allowing it to flex a little bit, but they are really quite stiff in holding this, and I think these are going to be really quite good. Now for mounting this dude's cab and this anti-vibration plate, I'm going to put it pretty much in the middle of the shelf, just make sure I have enough room for the amplifier here, and then just make sure that I have my JST connectors long enough to be able to reach all the button boards and the parts, and how many of them I need. So I need one for the Walter, I need 4 for the button boards, I need 1 for the plunger board, and 2 for the brain. And I won't be putting D-pad in today, maybe that's down the road. So I'm going to need 8 of these JST connectors. So I've got these here, and they're long enough to make my runs and make them neat. I can stuff all the wires into our wire management underneath the shelf here. So let's go ahead and install this now. Okay, and once again, rather than screwing this down to the board, I've done some more silicone like I did last time, and it seems to do the job and kind of yet even have more anti-vibration stuff. So we'll let this dry and then we can start setting up some wires. All right, while that silicone is drying on the dude's cab, we can start doing the wiring from our button boards to the actual buttons themselves. And we've also got these JST connectors that we're going to connect the button boards to the dude's cab. Now, because these nice Arnoz JST wires are already color matched with 6 different colors, in order to keep things a little bit sane for me and I know which color is which, I can trace it right back from the dude's cab to what button is what color. And then I've got matching 22 gauge wire for those colors that I'm going to use to get to the buttons. So pretty self-explanatory, just go through the colors and put them to the right buttons. And the ground wire is also going to have daisy chains so that you can have the 5 buttons put into one ground going to that button board. So let's go ahead and do that. So I won't go into a huge detail with each and every button board, but I want you to give you an idea of what you got to do. So I'm using this button board for the ground, fire, extra ball, and the 3 spares. So I'm starting with my extra ball switch, which is right here on these terminals here. So I need to make a wire that gets crimped with a spade connector, a female one, to either one of these, it doesn't really matter, and then long enough that I can get it into the screw to screw the other end of the wire down on the 3rd from the left spot. All right, so once I plug in my JST wire into the button board connector, you can see on this side I've got the green for ground, I've got the yellow for our future fire button, and then the black next to it is for our extra ball. So now when you plug this in that we just made, like that, you can see there's my daisy chained green for the grounds, and this is my fire button, is my extra ball button. So now you just have to plug these in. All right, that's the first button board, so now to continue on with the other three. Okay, and then here's the next button board. So we've got all the grounds for all our buttons here, all linked, daisy chained into one. And then we have our yellow is our left MagnaSave, black is our left flipper, red is our start, we're skipping return, and blue is going to be our exit. So now we can plug this in. Okay, for the tilt button board, we've got green once again for ground. The next one over is an additional ground. Then there's 1, 2, 3 spares, and then the blue wire is for the tilt. Okay, and then the last button board, we've got 5 green ground wires to go to the different buttons. The yellow wire is for our coin door number 2. The black one is for our coin door number 1. The red short one is for our launch ball button. Then the white is for our right flipper, and then the last one, the blue one, is for our right MagnaSave. Cool, so let's plug these into the boards, and then we can get the other end of the JSTs going to our dude cab. Don't forget to take your time and zip tie all the wires nice and neat out of the way so this thing can open and close without any issues. Okay, and the last JST connector is the one going to the plunger. All right, now we got to route all this through our cable management system up to the dude's cab and make it look pretty, so I'm not going to show that all to you, but I'll give you the finished look after. Okay, and because all these JST connectors look the same as all the 5, 6, 7 sets you're going to have here, we do this one at a time and make sure that you are plugging it in the right one. Okay, that's the brain board. Okay, this is the left flipper button board. And then the fire button board. Okay, then the tilt board. Okay, this is for the plunger. Okay, last one up is for the right flipper button board. And time to clean up the wires here, and then we are done. All right, now in order to get your dude's cab communicating with your PC, you're gonna need a USB-C extension cable. So this one is 1.5 meters long from Arnoz's website, and this would work in most cases. However, my PC does have that pull-out drawer and it's not quite long enough, and I want to pretty it up down the wire management, so I'm using a USB extension cable as well. So go ahead, plug that into your dude's cab and run it to your PC. Nice, look how clean that looks thanks to those button boards. Sweet. It's a beautiful thing, and that was actually really quite easy to do, guys. So for this video, to help make it a little bit shorter, I'm not installing the tilt. I think that'll make a much better video all on its own on how to add a mechanical tilt bob to a virtual pinball, so look forward to that. I'll probably do it right after this video. So instead, we're going to use the digital tilt that's inside VPX. And we're all wired up for a fire button when we do that. Once again, I'll make a separate video on how to install a fire button complete with drilling holes in the lockdown bars, etc. All right, now that that's all done, we can now download our Dude's Cab configurator and show you how to use that. All right, so get yourself to the arnoz.com website and look for the Dude's Cab, and when you scroll down to the bottom, you can see the documentation is here. The configurator is right here, so click to download that. Okay, and then once it downloads, you can go to where it is in your downloads folder, and then double left click on the installer. Okay, it looks like it needs some net runtime version, so we're gonna just say yes. Okay, now you don't need version 8.000. There will be new versions coming out all the time, so we'll grab this one here. Make sure you grab the right one. So x64, there's a hosting bundle that it's saying to support. So we'll do the hosting bundle. Okay, that's downloaded. Go to our download folder, double left click on that to run it. Agree, sign your life away and install. Click yes. Okay, so that's successfully installed. Close this, and looks like the dude's cab went away. So we're gonna restart the Win installer. Double left click. Okay, click next. Okay, select where you want this to be, then click next. Next, let it install. Okay, click yes. Okay, it's successfully installed. Okay, we'll click close to exit. And right here we've got a brand new desktop icon. So we're gonna double left click on this. Dude, look at that. Sick. That's one thing about Arnoz's boards. He's definitely got some style to them, which I really appreciate. Slick looking things. Okay, now I know that this is an older board that when I got it from Arnoz, and there has been a firmware update. I'm just not sure if this has already done this for me, but we can take a look and redo the firmware just in case. So click OK. Up at the top right, in case it's not in English for you, you've got these different languages to pick from. Okay, so it looks like it's already selected the COM port for Dude's Cab here, and looks like it's waiting for me to connect. All right, so the firmware version on my board is 1.0, and there is a brand spanking new one here. So let's do the latest one, and we should be able to just flash it by clicking Flash Firmware. Now make sure you're not going to have your computer shut off or internet kick out on you here while you do this. Yeah, we want to upgrade. Sweet, that was easy. Okay, it says we just have to reconnect it, so click OK, and sure enough, it's not there anymore. So there it is up here, click connect, and we got our new firmware. All right, so we got some stuff here. We can change the name of our cab, change the card ID if we're working with LED Wiz. There's a night mode at start, so if we click this, everything that we pick to be night mode will be automatically done that way at night. And then down here we got load dude file. I'm pretty sure this is if you have a saved dude file, like once you get this all set up like we're gonna do today, you could save it, and then maybe if you're building another cab or redoing stuff, you could load that file later. And a log file should be for if there's any issues that you can open up and help you figure out what's wrong. All right, let's go to, this is general, let's go to inputs. Start putting some stuff in here. Okay, starting right at the top, we've got a shift mode button. So instead of adding X-Patter and making other buttons become shift mode buttons, we can make one of these buttons. If you hold down and press other buttons, they can do shifted things. So for now, I'm gonna try to keep this the same as my budget cab, so when I play between the two, I'm not gonna get screwed up. So I made my extra ball the shift mode button. Extra ball is kind of one of those rarely used things, so if you press it and hold it and do something else, nothing's gonna happen. So we're gonna press extra ball. Okay, and if you notice that it has now added all the shifted things. So all of the buttons that we're gonna put in when you press the extra ball button will also now have this operation, what they'll do when you have it shifted. Okay, night mode button, we are going to select the brain night mode button. That's inside the coin door for that. So you click that, and all our stuff that is noisy, we can select and say it's a night mode toy, so it'll automatically shut them off. Okay, we can leave that as QWERTY. Okay, so for our start button, if we open this up, and I'm hoping that if I push start, it will automatically select it for us. So it's showing, it's flashing what it is. So it's button 1 right over here is where it's flashing when I press the start button. So that's how I'm going to know what button. So button 1. For now, I'm not going to have the shifted anything on the start button, and we don't need anything fast for the latency. We can leave it on normal for just the start button. Okay, extra ball, same deal. Open it up, push the extra ball, and that is button 2 that's flashing. Man, this is super easy. Okay, it doesn't have a shifted option because it is the shift mode button you have to press down, so that's fine. We'll leave latency as normal. Okay, coin 1, that is our left coin return. That is button 3. Now, I don't think I'm going to put any of the shifted in for today, but I just want to make sure that you guys understand how to do that. I'm going to be using my shifted buttons pretty much only for Pinball, and so I haven't set up Pinball, so I really don't know what I'm going to be setting up here. But to give you an example, if I wanted to push the coin 1 button in and I wanted it to do something on my keyboard, I could say that, you know, when I push keypad minus or one of these things that doesn't interfere with VPX or any of the PinUP Popper stuff, I can tell pinball, that means to go volume up for the table or volume down for the table, or vice versa. So once I get pinball set up, I'll start putting in all the shifted things. So for example, for coin 1, the left coin return button on the coin door, I've added a shifted key so that when I press the extra ball and hold it, it will now know that I'm wanting a shifted button. And then if I press the coin 1 button in addition, it will give me a keyboard O stroke, which for VPX brings up the operator menu so that I can do things like mute, or I can start recording one of the screens for PinUP Popper media, etc. Okay, coin 1 can be normal as well. Coin 2, that's button 4. And we'll leave the shifted for now, leave it a normal. Okay, launch ball, button 5. And we will leave the shifted and everything normal there as well. Now, return, I didn't have anything in there, but I do want my exit button. So my exit button is button 7. So for now, we're going to leave this and not really put anything there for it. But if in the future I want to add a button for something, I do have this spot for it. So exit is button 7. That's good. Can leave that as shift, no shift and latency as well. Okay, flipper left is button 8. And we want this one to be low latency. And it's already been selected, so for the flipper stuff. So that's good to see. So this is going to make it really, really quick for us when we're in our game and have no lag. Okay, and then flipper right is button 9. And if you'll notice, I haven't really had to change any of these, so the way those JST connectors and the way I wired it up has been correct so far. Okay, low latency as well. Magna left is button 10, low latency, great. And Magna right is button 11, and we want low latency on that as well. Okay, tilt, it is all ready to go. I just don't have the tilt button in, but I could literally just open up my coin door and touch those wires together and it'll register. So there we go, button 12, which is tilt, so that's set up for later when I do the video right after this one. And latency normal. Okay, same thing with the fire button. I'm going to make a separate video on how to do the drilling of the hole and installing the fire button. So same deal, I'm going to touch those connections, and that's button 13, which it already is. And we do have, I think, 5 or 6. There's more than just the flipper button, so fire button could be low latency too, so there's no lag on that. And then door. So if you have a coin switch, then you're going to want to wire this switch so that it triggers for the door, like when you open the coin door. But in my case, I'm using the brain board. So if I push the door button, that's button 14, like it already says it is. Okay, ROM exit should be 15, but let's test it. Yeah, ROM 15. And then ROM minus is 16. Yeah, and ROM plus is button 17. And then ROM enter is 18. Yeah, perfect. And then we got volume negative is 19. And volume plus is 20. And then I don't have D-pad hooked up on anything, but if down the road, if I wanted to make sure I could play Miss Pac-Man, that has to have a up pad, down pad controller, you could put this, or if you had a joystick that you decided to put on your lockdown bar, then you would just make sure that the left, right, up and down work for this. So I'm gonna skip that. Okay, night mode is button 25. And then I've got a bunch of spares here. Now because I've been using those JST connections in the dude's cab and I have it wired up properly, you'll be noticing that these buttons that I'm putting in, I haven't had to change a single one. They are exactly what they are supposed to be in the right spots. So when you get to the bottom here, when you get to calibration, it should be button 32. And I recommend that you don't actually push the calibration button to get it to pop up here to show you which button it is, because first off, it won't actually flash which button it is, so you still won't know what button it is. And the other thing it's going to do is it's going to initiate the calibration process. And I did this my first run through this, and long story short, what it ended up doing is running the calibration without me pushing and pulling the plunger. And so when it was done its calibration, it thought that the resting position for the plunger was also where my push button digital button is, which it automatically set as launch ball, like this. So this time you can see that I didn't actually push and pull the plunger here. So what it ended up doing is putting my digital push button and my digital pull button are these red and blue lines, which are right there. And so when I had the default setting for the push button as the launch ball, if I go back to my inputs Look at that, button 26 is on permanently, and it's because it thinks I'm on the push button right now. So when you're going to calibrate, make sure that you move the plunger in and out to set these digital push and pull buttons, and then that won't happen for you. So at this point, I highly recommend you take a couple pictures with your cell phone, or at least write down what each of these functions are and which button operates that. So that way, when you go into future pinball and visual pinball, you'll be able to go into the key preferences and actually put those proper button numbers in for what you want. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up to the accelerometer, and my USB port is facing out the back. So that's what we want there. All right, now all of these is going to be for increasing the sensitivity. So if you find that when you're nudging the cabinet, you're not seeing it move enough, then you could increase the sensitivity. If you notice that how you like to shove the cabinet, it's not detecting it, you might want to move it up and in both axes. And then dead zone is basically if you've got your nudges within that green zone, then it's not going to act on the machine at all. It's going to act like a dead zone. So what this is good for is if you've got some solenoids or some SSF that's shaking and making that move around, but you don't want it to actually register as a nudge or towards a tilt, then you could increase your dead zone. So for now, because I don't know how sensitive this is going to be, I'm going to leave it at the stock 3% and then go from there. Tilt range, I believe if you have it 0, there is literally no tilt going to happen. This probably be what you'd want to set if you're doing a digital tilt. And then the bigger the percentage here, you can see that that's the area of where you're going to actually tilt. So if I can get this to move out of that red, that is going to be registering as a tilt and sending it to VPX. So once again, for now, since we don't have a tilt button, I'm going to leave that at 0. So this all looks okay, and I'll probably have to come back and forth and adjust this once I get in the game and see how I like it. Okay, plunger. All right, so for the plunger section, if you don't have a plunger, a real one, then just click this off, but we do have one, so we're going to enable it. The inverted is just in case the potentiometer actually thinks it's backwards. Like for whatever reason, if you pull it and it shows it's pushing, then you could click that if you needed to. The pull interval is recommended to leave it at 16 milliseconds, so don't really touch that one. All right, so this jitter window is on kind of like a dead zone, so that if your plunger looks like it's moving when you're in the game in VPX, then you could increase this window and make sure that it doesn't detect that moving and shaking and try to visually simulate that on the screen. Otherwise, I'm going to leave this at 1% for now. Okay, calibration duration, this is how long it's going to calibrate for. It's only set at 5 seconds, but we could probably increase this a little bit more for me to be able to talk while I'm doing this. So when you're ready, you're going to press the calibrate button, and you're going to notice that this starts moving a little bit. At this point, you're going to want to pull the plunger all the way to the end. You don't have to let it go. And then go back, and then push it all the way forward, and then just leave it, and then let it do its calibration. So here we go. Pull it all the way out, don't let it go. Go all the way down, and then let it go. And so now it knows its pull and push max, and it's going to use that for your buttons. All right, so calibration is done. It's got a little check mark for calibrated. And you can also, instead of having to push this button, you could tell it what button you want to use on your cab to make a calibration, which is in the coin door, which is already selected. And then when you push the plunger all the way in, you can select that to be a virtual button. And you can also have a pull button. Now on my other budget cab, my push in is actually to initiate the shutdown PC menu inside of PinUP Popper. So for right now, I'm going to tell it that it is spare one. I also want to mention one other thing here. So if you remember that I hardwired a little momentary on switch on the end of the 3D printed file for holding the plunger, the Potar plunger. So you can use that physical button, you just have to wire it up to one of these spare buttons on the dude's cab, or you actually don't even need to use that. So there is these digital push buttons and pull buttons that you can use instead that uses the distance of where the plunger is to know that you want to use that button. Now, a little word to the wise, you have to be careful what you put in here because it can actually affect the gameplay, and it's something that I figured out on my budget build. If you decide to use this push button for your launch ball, because you don't have a launch ball button, Keep in mind that you're going to have to make sure that this is a very, very hard press with the plunger to set this limit. Otherwise, when you let go of a plunger from a full pull out and you let it go, sometimes the end of the plunger can actually touch the end here. And if it senses that, it'll do some really weird things where it goes to launch the ball, but it kind of doesn't hit it with enough force for it to clear out of the ball area. It'll have some weird kind of launching effects happening, and it's because it's detecting that you're pushing the launch ball button right as you hit the ball. So just keep that in mind. And so what I decided to use for mine is some out-of-game functions. So none of these spare one, spare two buttons are going to be doing anything for me inside of VPX that will affect gameplay. So for example, my push button is only set up as a button so that when I'm in the PinUP Popper menu, when I push it in all the way, it'll put on my exit PinUP Popper menu so that I can shut down the PC and things like that. Now we'll go on to output cards. For right now, I don't have any cards to put in for this video, but when we go to put in the solenoids and start putting some toys in, I have a Walter board and a bunch of Moss 8 boards and things like that. So this is where we're going to come back to in future videos to be able to add these new boards. Okay, and then let's take a look at the debug monitor page. So this one here, you're not going to really have to mess with. This is basically just logging all the commands and issues that this thing is doing. And if there's any issues or errors, then we can actually save this and send it off to Arnaud to get some help. But for what we're doing right now, we don't need this. Okay, when you're done everything, you got to make sure that you save this stuff. So we're going to just go up to click Send Config. And you also got to save to memory. Okay, and then you can go ahead and kick out of this. All right, at this point, let's open up VPX. So C drive, vPinball, Visual Pinball. Scroll down to the bottom to vPinball X. Now you're going to have to set these up for the different versions here so that the buttons match. But for right now, I'm only using this one here, so we're just going to do this one. Okay, now from Visual Pinball, we're going to go to Preferences, and we're going to go to Configure Keys. Okay, in the interest of saving time, I have already bounced back and forth a couple times between Virtual Pinball and these button assignments and the plunger settings to get it operating exactly how I want in the game. So technically, if you've got a dude's cab and you wired it up with JST and exactly how I did, these buttons should be exactly the same for you. But if they're not, or if you're not sure how to do this, all you have to do is go up to something like your left flipper, and you basically can go down here and select whatever button you think it is, and then select it, and that will be the button that has to match with your dude's cab for your left flipper. So you can go ahead and add all of the things in here. Don't forget to have override default button layout checked off so that it'll work for you. And for your nudge settings, it's going to be different for every person out there, but this is what I ended up settling with for now. I will probably have to come back in here once I have SSF and my solenoids and maybe tweak this a little bit. Make sure you have the nudge filter on and enable the analog nudge. And for right now, because we don't have a physical tilt, we're going to be selecting the tilt here. And the tilt sensitivity that I went with is this right here. So you're going to have to mess with your cabinet on these buttons back and forth, but this should get you going pretty quick. And keep in mind that once you click OK, this is only for our default VPX. So if you're going to be using any other legacy Visual Pinball X, then you're going to have to, or having any alt launchers for other versions of Virtual Pinball X, then you're going to have to go and open those and go into preferences and change those buttons as well. Okay, now you got to do the same thing for Future Pinball. So once the Future Pinball menu pops up, go to Preferences, go to Key Games and Controls, and then same thing. You're going to go over here and you're going to go to this pull-down menu and change it from mouse to Dude's Cab Gamepad. You're going to want to check off Enable. And then same thing, these buttons should be exactly the same for you guys as well. So if you wanted to copy those over, or like I said, use your buttons that you copied from into Dude's Cab to make sure that these buttons match up with the appropriate button actions in Future Pinball. Then the last thing we're going to do is configure our PinUP Popper button inputs. So let's open up PinUP Popper config. We're going to go up to Popper setup, and we're going to go down to controller setup. Okay, once again, I've got all this set up exactly how I like it to work. So you should be able to use these ones, the same thing. However, if you want to know how to input yours, it's really quite easy. You basically pick the function you want. So exit emulators is going to be my red exit button. And all you do is you double left click, and it brings up this section to the right here. And then all you do is you press a button on the keyboard, or in this case, a joystick button. So red joystick button is a 6, so it didn't change for me. And then you just go through the list and put what you need. One key thing to note is do not have all of your exits as the same red exit button. Otherwise, you're going to press it once, and not only will it kick out of the game you're playing, it'll kick right out of Popper right to desktop. So make sure you don't have that. And my system menu, this is how I can shut down the PC. This is the button stroke for my digital push button on the Plunger. Okay, we can close this up. Okay, and about the only other thing that I changed that I wanted the same as my budget cab is I wanted to have my instruction card showing during game, not just in PinUP Popper. So what you do is you go to Popper Setup, go to Global Config, go over to Script, and I had to add this right here. So show info in game equals 1. Make sure the beginning of those words have a capital letter. And this just allows the help menu to pop up on the screen when you're in a game if you want. So for me, when I press my left coin button, return button, it pops up on the screen so I can see how to play the game. And if you add that, make sure you save it. Okay, that's pretty much it. So let's check out what it looks like. Okay, so I've got my left flippers so I can go left and right. And I've got my start button to enter into things. And these are the games I got going on. And then enter to start a game.
I am now loading up the game. Have fun.
Wow, that's so quick. We're talking like 4 or 5 seconds to get into a game. That's awesome. Okay, Plunger's working. Insert coin. Nice. Here's my game help. Turn it on and off. Nice. Okay, my shifted function. So if I hold extra ball, that's my shifted button, and press this, I will get my operator menu on the back glass. And then from there, I can go down with my flipper buttons and mute or record displays, etc. And if I want to kick out of that, I just have to do the shifted button and coin return to get rid of the operator's menu. And if I wanted to record a screen, all I got to do is pull on the Plunger, and then it'll press R like on the keyboard, which will start recording or stop recording. And it doesn't do anything in-game unless you're actually in that recording function. And then, so we can start a game here. Okay, and we got our nudge going. I've got it set up pretty realistic, I think. And the tilt does work if I go really hard with it. So that works properly for now. So we've got a fully functioning machine here. Sweet. Did I mention how awesome this looks? Okay, and then if I'm done playing, kick out. And if I am completely done playing, I can push on my Plunger here, and that brings up my menu so I can exit back to desktop or even shut down my PC. Oh, this is so nice. The combination of having an OLED screen plus 120 hertz plus low latency buttons from the Dude's Cab, all set up with nice nudging, this thing is an amazing thing to play. I can see that I'm going to start having problems playing my budget build without doing the upgrade for the screens and computer. And Dude Cab. Sweet. This is definitely going to improve my virtual pinball game. I love it when that happens. When you try to teach somebody or show off your pinball skills, you suck. All right, that's a wrap in another video from Way of the Wrench, this time on how to install your Dude's Cab and the button boards and get your buttons all hooked up so you can play pinball without that stupid keyboard. And how easy and quick was that to use that Dude's Cab. So thank you very much. If you are interested in ordering a Dude's Cab or those button boards, I'll put a link down in the video description below so you can go to L'atelier Arnoz and get yourself one of those. What's up next? I think the next thing would be putting that mechanical tilt bob in there for you guys and showing you how to put that in. That'd be a shorter, quicker video for you guys. And then after that, maybe even how to put the fire button hole in and get that fire button hooked up as well. So lots of good content coming your way. If you haven't already, why don't you join us on Instagram, and that way you can check out what's going on in the shop in between videos. And until next time, take it easy.